Dusk arrives here like an old friend who knows not to knock. The light slides along the stucco, tastes the dust on the jasmine vine, and lays a soft hand on the porch rail. Our modest bungalow exhales. The clock in the kitchen slows its heartbeat. The refrigerator hum settles into a hymn. Only patient people here. Come closer, child. Sit beside me. Let your feet dangle. If you listen with the bottoms of your feet, you'll hear this street learning how to breathe. These houses were poured in honest decades, mall square, shouldered, hopeful, a row of roofs with sunburned shingles, yards that believe in sprinklers, mailboxes that know everybody's business. On summer evenings you can hear the soft argument of lawn mowers, the distant yes of a train, the gentle gossip of wind in the bottle brush. Even the crows sound neighborly when the sun turns orange through the palms. This is where our story lives, not in a mansion, not in a myth. In a place where the porch light knows your name, and the screen door learns your temper. In a kitchen that can taste when you're lying and refuses to burn the onions if you're telling the truth. The kind of house that forgives your shoes for forgetting to be polite. You ask me why I call it modest. Because modest things tell the truth quicker. A bungalow does not perform. It offers. It says, here is shade. Here is a place for mail and mercy. Here is a chair that remembers yesterday's weight and does not complain. Modesty is not smallness, little love. Modesty is accuracy. It is exactly enough. When we first came here, the stucco looked like bread, fresh. The paint on the window trim was too white. The kind of white that has not made any mistakes. We planted a lemon tree even though the yard argued about space. Your grandpa said, a lemon gives a house a reason for visitors to say, he was right. That tree would later teach us how to bow without breaking. But I didn't know that yet. I only knew I wanted yellow to happen here. Dusk is a teacher, too. It teaches the house how to listen. It teaches your eyes to forgive the day. Have you noticed how you can remember more clearly when the sky is the color of whispering? That's why I save certain stories for this hour. Some truths are loud. They need noon. But the truths I owe you about love that loses its map and finds it again, about money that tests a family, and mercy that pays in a better currency, those belong to Dusk. On this street, the neighbors have seasons the way trees do. There is Mr. Klein, who shakes the newspaper before he reads it, as if bad headlines might fall out like crumbs. There is the Sanchez boy who skateboards with elbows that do not believe in bones. There is Miss Adele, who waves at passing clouds because one of them, she insists, looks like her old dog. When her tomatoes succeed, she sends a jar of sauce across every fence. When they fail, she sends cookies made of apology and sugar. Either way, the block says thank you. You want to know about us? Well, I was a young wife in a dress I could wash in the sink and a laugh I could wear with anything. Your grandpa had hands that could persuade a stubborn bolt to remember its purpose. He could fix a hinge and a crank and a cranky mood with the same patience. We didn't own much, but we had a habit of forgiveness and a suspicion that something good was trying to happen here. That's enough to make a home out of lumber and hope. We bought the couch from a couple moving north to chase snow. We nodded as if snow were a promotion. The springs sang, but softly. We agreed to call it music. The stove worked when you coaxed it like a child learning to read. The porch looked west, which means we could practice endings without growing bitter. Endings taste different when you watch the sun do them well every single day. I placed a ceramic lamp by the front window on the very first night. 2 fingers, 1 click. The room remembered who we were. Not rich, not lost, just 2 people telling the dark, politely, where to sit. We learned the neighborhood through the language of small favors. A borrowed drill that came back smarter. A plate returned with cookies that didn't last 3 minutes because we ate apology and gratitude for dinner. A wrench loaned. A ladder offered. A ride to the clinic when the ankle had opinions. A block becomes a family the moment it decides to be useful instead of impressive. Then the years did what they're paid to do. Taught us the costly chapters. Work got slippery. Your grandpa's hours lived at the factory until the factory forgot its name. Bills arrived with the confidence of strangers. The lemon tree bent once, twice, in wind that sounded like paperwork. We learned to make soup out of humble things and pride out of none that it was here. In this small-shouldered house at the hour when the sky kisses the roofline, that our hardest lesson knocked. How people you love can lose themselves with the door open. How honoring yourself can look to others like disobedience, and how a porch light is a better argument than a sermon. You're watching my hands, wrinkled, yes, and grateful. Hands that have held a hot pan and a cold silence. Hands that have learned to open again after closing too hard. Every line is a road I walked and somehow returned from. If you trace this vein here, you can feel where I carried your father back to his bed after he fell asleep. Mid-sober face in mashed potatoes. Pilgrim of exhaustion. Little spoon still in his fist. We laughed then. I laugh now, gently, so I don't wake the memory. That in the mornings I'd walk this street with a mug that remembered my mouth. That eucalyptus on the corner would drop silver leaves like punctuation marks. A dog named Truman would evaluate my life choices, decide I was worth escorting, and proceed to investigate every lawn with the seriousness of a detective. Back home, I'd open the front door so the house could inhale. It would take the day in 3 breaths: coffee, sunlight, resolve. Your grandpa called this hour the repair. He meant the way evening repairs the edges the day frayed. He meant the way the sun lays a bandage of color over the roofs. He meant the way a person can tell the truth more kindly when the sky has already said sorry for what the heat made it. And yet let me be plain, repair is not the same as forget. There were words we had to say, and bills we had to face, and a storm of distance we had to outweigh. There was a season when a text arrived like a winter wind. We are keeping things simple. Please, don't visit. Such sentences wear a polite coat. They still bite. I will tell that part honestly when we reach it. For now, know this. The house survived because the house practiced welcome even when welcome had no audience. Sometimes, I think the lamp taught me more theology than any pulpit. It does not argue with darkness. It offers itself. It does not prove. It provides. It does not demand an explanation from the night before. It gives what it is. A good light knows its job. Come, let's walk the rooms while dusk paints the molding with its small glory. Here's the hallway where birthdays turn the corner. Here's the bathroom mirror that forgives impatience. Here's the second bedroom that learned to be an office, then a nursery, then a museum for boxers labeled someday. Here's the kitchen where onions are saints and basil is a rumor. We keep believing because it makes the sauce kinder. You want a story that carries weight. I will give you a story that carries and sets down. That's what good carrying does. It knows when to rest. Once, the river in the wash behind the school forgot itself. Rain bullied the gutters and sudden water ran like ambition, fast and unafraid. We were not in danger, just in witness. The street gathered on porches to watch nature remember its power. Your father, 6 then, wanted to throw a paper boat in and call it a journey. We chose the curb instead. Some risks learn more if they attend class first. He pouted as if prudence were insult. I tucked a paper boat into his pocket and told him, the world will wait for your story if you learn its grammar. He launched that boat in a calmer puddle and declared the Pacific conquered. It was. Conquest is sometimes a well-placed puddle. At night we would drag our chairs to the porch and let the day pass in front of us like a parade of ordinary miracles. Somebody's screen door would clap. A father would jog past, pushing a stroller that believed in speed. A girl would practice scales on a trumpet that loved volume more than pitch. The sky would turn that impossible sherbet-color apricot and bruisand. The palms would draw calligraphy against it. Your grandpa would rub his knees and call it good. He is gone now, but the porch kept his shape for a long while. Chairs do that. After someone you love leaves, furniture becomes a kind of archaeology. You sit where they sat, not to pretend, but to remember the angle of their patience. The porch taught me to keep a seat empty without making the seat a shrine. That is how you grieve without moving out of your life, on this very step. Once, Miss Adele's nephew argued with his girlfriend about whether love is a noun or a verb. I wanted to tell them it is a lamp, no need to diagram it, only plug it in and honor the bill. But I stayed quiet because the young deserved to audition their metaphors. Later, they came by with brownies and a truce. The porch approves of baked goods as policy. There was a summer of layoffs. The street went soft with worry. We traded what we could. Skills, mostly. Mr. Klein repaired small engines in his driveway for the cost of a handshake. I sewed hymns and made soup. The Sanchez boy taught fitful husbands how to fix the Wi-Fi with less swearing. We proved what neighborhoods always hope they can prove, that the line between your yard and mine is mostly imaginary. When the refrigerator gets honest about how little it's holding. That's when I wrote a rule and taped it inside the pantry door. If you have more bread than stories, make sandwiches and listen. If you have more stories than bread, tell them slowly. Someone will arrive with butter. It is almost night. The bungalows across the street have turned on their quiet halos. You can learn a lot about a family by the color of its bulbs. The house to Daum uses a blue porch light in April to honor a memory. The house with the rosebush uses warm amber because the father says white light feels like a waiting room. We use the ceramic lamp in the window because that is where our welcome lives. Perhaps you're wondering when the trouble begins. Story asks for trouble, the way the lemon tree asks for sun. Without it, you get no sweetness worth keeping. Trouble came disguised as a favor, then a boundary, then a sentence with a period that felt like a closed gate. It came with good reasons and tired hearts, and the belief that peace is the same as silence. It wasn't. We learned that lesson here, under this porch light, with this street listening politely through screens and shadows. Before we walk into that season, let me give you a gentler one. The day we brought your father home from the hospital, the bungalow threw a party with its muscles. The floorboards took his tiny cries and tucked them into their grain. The kitchen learned new music, bottle warmers and soft shushing, and the rhythmic tap of a parent counting to 3,000. I would walk him at dusk from window to window, introducing him to the square of sky each frame owns. This is the blue. You'll remember when someone tells you the world is unkind. I'd say, this is the orange that will teach you how to finish what you start. This is the gray that will show you how to rest. He slept. I did not. Mothers sleep later. When the house has learned the baby's name, we baptized him in lemons, metaphorically, as Grandpa liked to say, by rubbing a little zest on the cutting board and letting the air become courage. Courage smells like lemon and clean towels and something on the stove that needs 5 more minutes but isn't offended by waiting. Courage tastes like water with a thin slice in it, tart enough to wake the mouth, kind enough to share. You think I'm stalling? Maybe I am. I want you to know the good weight of this place before I set the other weight in your hands. A house is more than a stage for trouble. It is the first audience for your mercy. It hears the draft of your apology. It witnesses the rehearsal of your vow. It knows if you meant it. This one did. This one knows the difference between loudness and strength. We will not blame this house for what happened next, nor the street, nor the sky that tried its best to look tender while we made our mistake. We will let dusk do what it does best, soften the outlines so we can see the shape without cutting ourselves on the edges. Take my hand. Feel the lamps switch beneath your finger. 2 fingers, 1 click. The room will remember. The room will listen. And tomorrow, when the sun lifts the oranges on the neighbor's tree and the mailman rehearses his whistling, we'll still be here. Exactly where the story asked us to begin. A modest bungalow in a California suburb at dusk. And now, because truth arrives on schedule even when you'd rather it phone ahead, I'll tell you about the evening the message came. The polite message, the one that asked me not to visit, and taught me how light can become a language louder than any knock. Vio grandmother. The message arrived like polite weather. No thunder, just a small chime against the counter. I was rinsing the lemon knife. The screen lit my face the color of aquarium glass. Your father's name at the top. Sentence that believed it was reasonable. We're keeping things simple this season. Please don't visit. She needs calm. Hope you understand. Understand. A word that can turn a mother into a hallway if she lets it. I read the sentence again. It did not change clothes. The kettle began to murmur. Turned off the flame as if mercy were something you can do with your hand. I wanted to answer with a storm. Instead, I answered with a lamp. The light is on, if you need it. I placed the phone face down, like a book I was not finished with but could not keep reading. Then I dried the lemon knife and put it away where sharp things rest after telling the truth. That evening I turned the lamp on early, not to argue, to witness. Neighbors did their ritual, dances, hoses coiling like tame snakes, garage doors confessing their echo, a dog negotiating with a squirrel about jurisdiction. The bungalow breathed, the street exhaled. My chest remembered the choreography of not panicking. I set 3 plates anyway. Habit is a sturdy bridge. I folded napkins the way you fold small flags. When you don't know where the country went, when the clock moved past likely and into no, I stacked the plates and carried one to the porch. A plate is a good place to put your hands when you are practicing patience. The lamp showed me my face in the window. Older than yesterday. Softer, too. Softer is a kind of strength they don't put in manuals. I slept that night the way you sleep in a waiting room. Not well, but willing. Morning brought its honest light and its honest list. Sweep. Mail. Basil. Call. Adele. Try to forgive the sentence. That bit without teeth. I did the list. A list is a kind teacher. The phone stayed quiet. Silence can be a gentleman if you teach it manners. I did not text again. I did not add any sermons to the air. I carried the lamp to the window each afternoon and gave it its one job. Welcome, even if welcome has no audience today. Days did that slow braid they do when hurt refuses to be dramatic. Miss Adele waved a tomato at me as if it were a microphone, and asked what news the house had collected. Mostly sunsets, I said. She nodded like sunsets are headlines that always pay their sources. I wrote your father a letter I did not mail. I used my careful teacher hand. I put the truth in the future tense so it could practice arriving. When you come, there will be soup. When you cannot, there will still be light. If you need a quiet that is not loneliness, I have a room for that. I slid the letter into the drawer where good intentions keep watch. Not everything needs a stamp to do its job. The first week felt like fog. The second, like unpacking a box labeled fragile that turned out to be full of towels. You think you'll break. You find absorption instead. I gave my evening's job. Polished the lamp base until brass remembered. It's sunrise. Teach the radio to find a station on purpose. So the rip in the apron where onions take offense. Humming counts as work when your heart is carrying something heavy. Then winter started writing its name on the roses. California winter, which means sweaters at sunset and stubborn green in the grass. But inside, the season was thicker. Inside we had a different climate. I learned the weight of an empty chair. Not a dramatic weight, no shouting wood, no opera. Just the steadiness that comes from a seat doing its one job without a body to reward it. I told the chair, thank you. Chairs do not blush, but they understand. On the third Sunday of silence, a child's knock arrived on the porch. Grace, red hat, cheeks like cinnamon toast. She held a plate of cookies under foil the way couriers carried treaties. Mom says this house smells like it deserves company, she said, serious as a postman. We sat. She counted raisins, asked why my lamp wakes before the dark, so someone traveling by sorrow can see where to land, I said. She nodded the way children nod when the world remembers to be sensible. Then she left a sugar comet trail across the table. I brushed it into my palm, kept it like glitter that refuses to admit it's not a jewel. I walked the block after dishes, bungalows at attention, some with blue porch lights, grief. Some with amber permission. Our ceramic lamp in the window doing the quiet work, again and again. Like a nurse on the night shift who knows the names of all the machines and almost all the prayers, I practiced boundaries, not barbed wire. Garden fences. Low. Respectful. Painted the color of clarity. I told myself, you will not push, you will not punish, you will not vanish, you will not audition for love in a room that forgot to invite you. Instead, you will make soup and keep the porch swept and turn the lamp on when the sky reports peaches and gray-blue milk. You will remain findable. You will remain kind. Work helps. I taught mending at the community center. Teenagers brought backpacks that had survived semesters and skateboards and storms. I showed them how needle and thread turned torn into testimony. Like forgiving, one girl said. Exactly, I told her. We nodded. Professionals in a craft with no graduation. At the library circle we argued about a story where a mother, let's go too late. Someone said love is a leash. I said love is a light. We agreed to disagree, and the cookies disappeared anyway. Nights grew early. The maples rehearsed their silhouettes. I moved the lamp a little closer to the glass, and discovered that a small adjustment can make a house feel braver. On the fifth week, a postcard, no return address, a skyline, a fountain with light sketched across it like a promise that lost its pen. 2 words, thinking of you. I put it under the lamp so the light could think. Light has good thoughts. They're simple and repeatable. I did not answer. I watered the basil and whispered to it about faith. Plants prefer short sermons and regular water. I am telling you these small things because they are the hinges. Doors matter, but without hinges, you're just holding a promise that falls over. One evening Mr. Klein waved me into his driveway and asked if I knew anything about carburetors. Only that engines sulk when they're ignored. I said. We stood with our elbows on the fender and talked about his brother's stubborn heart. Machines. Men. Mercy. Everything wants oil. Everything wants patience. We fixed nothing and improved everything. He sent me home with a jar of peaches that tasted like the part of summer that doesn't brag. Later that night, I opened the drawer and took out the letter. I had not mailed. I did not read it. I just let my hand feel its weight. Paper can hold what mouths cannot without tearing. Then came the rain that thinks it lives. Here, the kind that writes itself down the window for hours. The wash behind the school remembered it was once a river in Practicedi brewed chamomile, and told the steam the secrets I don't tell. The calendar. My phone lit with a photo, a tiny shoe in a puddle, trousers just above the splash, no caption. None needed. I sent back the lemon tree, yellow as loud hope. He replied with nothing. But the next day, a second photo, 2 hens, one big, one small, around a paper cup of hot chocolate. You can hear apologies without words if you've trained your ears on ordinary miracles. I still did not visit. Boundary is the cousin of respect, but I left the porch swept, the kettle obedient, the lamp practicing its sentence. Then, because I am a person who likes treaties, I wrote 3 rules and taped them inside the pantry door. If you cannot come, say so early, as cleanly as rain. If you can come, come fully, both hands free of argument. If you are late, bring the truth and 2 lemons. The 3rd rule is mostly for swagger, but swagger occasionally pays rent. On Thursday, I carried a loaf to Miss Adele. She accepted it as if bread were a holiday. Her nephew was visiting. He fixed a hinge, kissed his aunt's hair, and said, "Sometimes absence teaches better than presence." I disagree, but the line has pretty shoes. It walks well in certain rooms. That night, the porch gathered a handful of people into conversation, the way dusk gathers hints of stars. We told jokes about sprinklers that think they're opera. We traded recipes that improve when you forget them halfway through, laughed without checking the road. I want you to understand this was not a story about waiting by a window, as if my life were on hold. This was a story about lighting the window while life continued. There is a difference. It is the difference between worship and worry. One Sunday, I set 1 plate. On purpose, I ate slowly. On purpose, I tasted every herb as if it had paid to be heard. Then, I washed the dish and placed it upside down to dry as if that were a ceremony with a choir. I walked to the porch. The street had its evening choir, sprinklers, strollers, a dog advising a skateboard. Peaches. Gray. Blue milk. My lamp. A patient yes. You came and sat. Small hand finding mine like a bird perching. Grandma, you asked, if you don't go there, how do you know if he's okay? I told you the truth. I don't always know, but I do always love, and love can travel where mothers cannot. You were quiet, performing the arithmetic of that sentence. Then you said, light travels fast. I kissed your hair, because children are scientists who occasionally publish perfect results. 1 more week. 2. The lamp kept its post. The house learned to sleep without rehearsing explanations. Then came the phone call that was not a chime but a ring. A ring with syllables. I let it sing 1 more time, then, polite, answered as if my breath had not just run down the hall to fed itself. Mom, he said. A voice I've known in 5 sizes. Are you well? Yes, I said. The lemons are bragging, and the porch has opinions. He laughed, a laugh that remembered toys under couches and dust bunnies with names. We moved carefully. If we were carrying a mirror together, little stops. Adjustments. No sudden turns. He said work was loud, the baby louder. The day is a deck of cards that refuse to be shuffled right. I said soup freezes beautifully, and Sunday afternoons are undefeated. I did not mention the message. I did not inventory the winter. We were holding a mirror. You do not discuss breakage while you're still in the hallway. Maybe after Labor Day, he said. A small sentence that asked for a runway. Maybe, I said, letting the word be a porch and not a loophole. We hung up. The lamp brightened without changing. Wattage, some lights have that gift. Labor Day came, dressed like a promise, and then decided to rain. Text message. Apologies, with emojis that tried hard and succeeded halfway. Turned the lamp on earlier. A small adjustment, a small improvement, did not keep score. I kept supper. 2 Thursdays later, a knock that remembered how, a car door. Shoes, on the mat, that knew to be polite, child on a hip, a grocery bag full of oranges, face with humility, arranged like flowers. Orange is the color of, sorry, he said. It is also the color of sunrise, I told him, and reached for the bag. We began again. Not from the beginning. Beginnings are too fragile. From the middle. Middles are honest and resilient. Middles know where the forks are. We sat with coffee that confessed steam. We passed the child between us like a future, spoke the slow sentences adults learn when they remember they are still somebody's child. I should say it, he began. I'm sorry for. The rest of the sentence did not arrive. It didn't need to. I heard it, standing in the doorway, hat in hands. Thank you, I said. We let the unsaid sit with us like a respectful guest. It behaved. Boundaries came next. Not punishment. Protection. Protection. I told him what the pantry door already knew. Say no early. Yes, fully. Call before the biscuits rise. If you bring absence, bring the truth that explains it. He nodded like instructions, or a kindness when you are tired of improvising. We wrote on the calendar, in ink. 2 Thursdays a month with groceries and unhurried dishes. One Sunday for soup, rain or shine. He shook my hand and then hugged me, and the bungalow documented the ritual in its wood. That evening, after they left, I sat on the step and listened to the neighborhood rehearse its ordinary miracles. The lamp was a lighthouse for nothing in particular. Which is the best kind of beacon. It means danger is not required for bravery to be useful. The winter of distance did not end with trumpets. It ended with schedules. Ends often do. They prefer clipboards to orchestras. And still even with treaties and calendars and oranges that apologized. There was work to do in the long rooms of the heart. Old drafts of sentences to rip up. Old maps to file under roads we will not take again. We did that work here. In a modest bungalow on a street with palm trees that draw calligraphy against sherbet skies. At dusk, when the house breathes and the porch remembers. Tomorrow, I'll tell you about the evening the rain lost interest and the door opened without speeches. About honest bread. About the apology that came in paper. Shoes. About the lesson the lamp taught us when thunder pretended to be permanent. For now, put your hand on mine. Feel how steady warmth can be when it stops trying to impress the cold. When twilight begins to deepen, the air outside my little bungalow turns the color of faded lilacs. The porch light flickers on by habit, but inside, it is the lamp that holds the real memory. Its glow leans across the carpet like a gentle tide, reaching for the photographs on the wall as though it wants to keep them warm. Sit closer, sweetheart. Let me tell you about the seasons when love stayed, when it wandered, and when I learned that even departures leave their own kind of shelter. I was nearly your mother's age when the first true leaving arrived. Your grandpa had taken a new job at the shipyard 2 towns over. It was supposed to be a 6-month contract, a chance to earn enough to patch the roof and replace the stove that coughed smoke each morning. I kissed him goodbye at dawn, the air sharp enough to taste, and watched the bus pull away until its taillights became tiny red stars. 6 months became a year. Then 2 letters came, at first thick with sawdust and stories about the smell of the ocean. But work is a hungry thing. It eats time before you even realize you're empty. I learned to fill the house with sound so it would not echo. I sang while I mended shirts. I talked to the kettle as if it were an old friend. I even read the newspaper out loud to the lemon tree in the yard, because someone should know the weather. Hold 3 South. When the first paycheck arrived, I placed it beneath the lamp and whispered, "Thank you for coming home, even if he cannot." That small ritual kept me steady. Money never warmed a pillow, but it told me we were still tethered. Your grandpa finally returned with shoulders a little stooped and eyes that carried both pride and apology. We sat on this very couch in silence for a long while, until the ticking clock began to sound like a heartbeat we could share again. He smelled of salt and machine oil, and when he held my hand, the house exhaled as if it had been holding its breath the entire time. That night, I learned that love is not the absence of distance. It is the willingness to wait without closing the door. Not all goodbyes are kind. Years later, when your mother was still in pigtails, my own mother fell ill back in Pennsylvania. The call came during supper. I remember the spoon slipping from my fingers and landing on the table with a small, polite clink. There were no flights that night, only a train leaving before dawn. Your grandpa offered to stay with the children, so I packed a bag with clothes and prayers and left a note on the fridge that said, "Back soon, keep the porch light on." That journey felt endless. The train rocked like a cradle trying to comfort a grown child. Each mile hummed a question. Would I arrive in time? I pressed my forehead to the cool glass and watched the lights of sleeping towns slide by like shy constellations. When I finally reached the old house, the porch light was burning, but the upstairs window was dark. My mother had slipped away an hour earlier. I stood in the doorway listening to the quiet, the kind that swallows sound instead of holding it. Grief is a heavy teacher, little one. It shows you the weight of unsent letters and unspoken thanks. I spent that night sitting beside her empty chair, whispering every story I had meant to share. I told her about your mother's laugh, about the lemon tree that finally bore fruit, about the way the California sunsets sometimes looked like the quilts she used to sew. Perhaps she heard me. Perhaps the walls carried the words to wherever she had gone. Either way, I left the next morning with my heart both cracked and strangely stronger. Hold for South when I returned. The children ran into my arms with a force that nearly toppled me. Your grandpa brewed tea and said nothing, which was his way of giving me space to let the tears find their own exit. That evening we ate simple soup, and I realized something important. Love cannot prevent every loss, but it can soften the landing. The soup was warm, the lamp was bright, and the house held me the way a mother once did. Years have a sly way of folding themselves, like linens stored in a cedar chest. Before long, it was your mother's turn to leave. College, she said, eyes alight with a mixture of fear and hunger for the world. I helped her pack 2 suitcases and a shoebox of recipes. On the morning she departed, I tucked a slice of lemon in her pocket, our little tradition for courage, and told her, find good work, find good people, but never forget the sound of this lamp when it clicks on. The house felt enormous after she left, as if the walls had expanded to mock the emptiness. I kept her room exactly as it was for months, smoothing the pillow each morning like a silent conversation. Letters came, then emails, then brief calls squeezed between her new life and bedtime. I learned again what I had known all along. Motherhood is a series of gentle goodbyes, stitched together with fierce love. Each departure trains the heart to stay open, even as it aches. Not all departures are permanent, child. Some are simply rehearsals for the next hello. The year your mother returned with you in her arms. I stood on this porch and felt every goodbye I had ever endured dissolve into the sound of your newborn cry. It was as if the universe had handed me a note that read, the circle remains unbroken. Let me tell you about one more leaving, though it still tastes bittersweet. Your grandpa's mind began to wander before his body did. At first it was small things, a misplaced key, a forgotten appointment, but soon the days became slippery. One autumn evening he looked out the window and asked when his train would arrive. There was no train, of course, only the neighbor's dog chasing leaves. I placed my hand on his and said, the train is late tonight, love, let's wait together. He smiled, content with the delay. The night he passed, the lamp flickered 3 times before settling into a steady glow. I like to believe it was his way of saying goodbye without making me hear the word. After the funeral, I sat here with the lamp burning and realized that love never really departs. It simply changes rooms. Every time I switch on this light, I feel his hand guiding mine. Child, do you see the pattern? Life keeps teaching me that departures are not empty, they are classrooms. From each I carried a lesson. Patience from the shipyard years, gratitude from my mother's final hour, courage from your mother's first suitcase, endurance from your grandpa's quiet fading. Every goodbye carved a space inside me where new love could live. So when the day comes, and it will, when you must leave this bungalow to chase your own sky, remember this, take the warmth, not the walls. The walls are only wood and paint. The warmth is what I have tried to give you with every cup of tea, every story, every lamp I clicked on against the dark. Carry that. It will light any room you ever enter. Come, darling, lean your head here. The lamp hums like a lullaby tonight. Do you hear it? That's the sound of every goodbye I survived, blending into a single note of welcome. And as long as this little house stands, it will sing you home whenever you need to remember where the light begins. Night is almost here, my dear. The last of the sunset slides behind the lemon tree, and the shadows on the porch stretched like gentle cats finding their beds. The lamp has claimed the room now. Its circle of light is small, but it's enough to hold our voices. Enough to keep the stories breathing. Do you know why I love dusk more than morning? Morning is a question. Dusk is an answer. It doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It simply shows you what stayed after the day tried to scatter everything. Tonight, as the first stars blink awake, I can feel the answers settle around us like a quilt stitched from all the years I have lived. You've heard the big departures, the long waits, the rooms that grew to quiet. But a life is not built only on departures, child. It is built on the tiny, ordinary stays, the mornings when the kettle sings on time, the afternoons when the postman waves, The nights when a neighbor leaves soup at the door because they remembered you exist. Those are the bricks that keep a soul upright. I used to think happiness would arrive like a grand train, loud and obvious, but it came more like these evenings, a slow gathering of warmth, a steady hand on a doorknob, a letter slipped through the mail slot with nothing inside but the word thinking. Hold for South. If I could send a letter to my younger self, the girl who once believed everything important required a trumpet, I would tell her this: pay attention to the quiet victories. They are the ones that last out. There was a winter when quiet victories were all I had. Your mother had taken a job back east. The children next door had moved away, and the neighborhood seemed to exhale and disappear after 5 o'clock. I kept the lamp lit every evening, even when the electric bill scolded me. Sometimes I'd sit for hours with a single cup of tea cooling between my palms, listening to the refrigerator hum. Loneliness visited, yes, but so did resilience. They shared the same doorway. Each night I chose to greet resilience first. It was during that winter that I discovered the joy of small kindnesses. I started baking bread for the mail carrier, leaving a slice wrapped in wax paper inside the mailbox. One afternoon he knocked, tears in his eyes, and said it was the first warm bread he'd tasted since his wife passed. We never spoke of it again, but after that, he always placed my letters gently, as if they were something alive. That's the secret of kindness, little one. It asks for nothing but leaves a light behind. Your grandpa used to say that every house has a heartbeat. You can find it if you listen closely, sometimes in the floorboards, sometimes in the pipes, sometimes in the way the curtains sway when no window is open. This bungalow's heartbeat is the lamp. Click, there it is. A quiet pulse against the dark. When the power went out during storms, I'd sit in the dark and imagine it still glowing, carrying every story we'd ever whispered. Hold 3 South. Even now, I sometimes wake in the middle of the night and touch the wall near the switch, just to feel the memory of its warmth. Let me tell you about the day your mother brought you here for the first time. You were only a few weeks old, wrapped in a blanket with tiny yellow stars. She placed you in my arms and whispered, "Mom, this is your new dawn." I looked down at your tiny face and felt every year of waiting fold into a single breath of gratitude. Your eyes were closed, but I swear you smiled like you were greeting not just me, but the lamp, the house, the lemon tree, and every unseen ancestor who had been keeping watch. From that day on, this bungalow learned a new kind of music. Your giggles ricocheted off the hallway, your baby footsteps invented a rhythm the old floorboards had never known. Even the kettle seemed to whistle brighter. Each visit you grew taller, braver, louder, and the lamp, faithful as always, widened its glow to make room for your laughter. But life is never content with only arrivals. One spring, your mother called to say she'd accepted a job overseas. My first instinct was to tighten my grip on the phone, as if holding it harder could keep her here. But love, true love, doesn't clutch. It blesses. So I blessed her journey. I promised to keep the lamp burning, not as a plea but as a welcome. The night she left, I brewed tea and opened the window. The cool air smelled of change, but the lamp's light felt like continuity itself, a promise that no matter where you both roamed, there would always be a soft place to land. Do you remember the night you slept here during the big storm? The wind howled like a restless choir, and the lemon tree scratched the siding as if it wanted to come inside. The power flickered twice, then went dark. You gripped my hand so tightly I could feel your heartbeat. We lit a single candle and sat in the glow, telling stories to outlast the thunder. You asked if the lamp would be lonely without electricity. I told you the truth. The lamp doesn't need power to remember. It carries every word we've spoken, every laugh, every tear. Its memory is made of moments, not wires. Moments. That is what I want you to carry, my darling. Not the house itself, though its walls have been good to us, but the moments that made it a home. The smell of bread cooling on the counter, the sound of rain racing across the roof, the sight of the porch-light catching your mother's smile when she returned after a long absence. These are the treasures you can pack without a suitcase. You might wonder why I tell you all of this tonight, when the world outside seems so calm. It's because calm evenings are the best time to plant seeds. Someday you will face your own departures. You will stand in a quiet room, holding a letter or a text message that changes everything. You will ache, you will question, and then, if you listen closely, you will hear the heartbeat of your own lamp, the steady proof that love does not vanish. It only changes shape. Asterisk, asterisk, come closer now. Let me show you something. Inside the drawer of this old side table is a small envelope. Inside the envelope is a single lemon seed. Your grandpa saved it from the first fruit our tree ever gave. He used to say, plant it when you find your own place, and the tree will teach you patience. I'm giving it to you tonight, not because I expect you to plant it tomorrow, but because I want you to remember that growth begins with something small, quiet, and stubborn enough to push through soil toward the light. Before you go, help me with the lamp. No, we're not turning it off yet. We're giving it a blessing. Place your hand over mine. Feel that gentle warmth. That is, every story we've shared tonight settling into the air. The lamp will keep them safe until you return. One day, when I am only a story myself, you will click it on and hear my voice in the hum. And you will know that love real working, everyday love outlives everything. The clock is patient tonight. The house breathes slow. Outside, the stars are stitching silver threads across the sky. Take this memory with you, child. Let it steady you when the world asks too much. Let it remind you that a modest bungalow in a quiet California suburb once held a lamp that refused to let the dark have the last word. And when you leave, whether it's tomorrow or years from now, promise me one thing. Keep a lamp in your own home. Keep it burning on nights when the world feels too large or too lonely. Let it be your silent witness, your faithful friend, your reminder that even when doors close and roads stretch farther than you can see, the light you've carried inside you will always find its way back. Now, listen with your heart. Do you hear it? That soft click, the sigh of a house content, that is the sound of love choosing to stay. Good night, my darling. Take the warmth, leave the walls, and never, ever doubt the light. Add a soft fade-out text overlay. If this story warmed your heart, subscribe to Grandma Cozy Stories for more evenings of love, loss, and hope.